Hi, folks. Welcome along to episode 52 of Percussion Discussion. Hope you're all well out there. Please check out our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to that if you get the chance to. It really helps us, and it will ensure that you don't miss any of the great interviews that we've already done or any of the great interviews that we've got coming up. If you prefer to listen to your interviews on the go, then you can find all of our conversations in podcast form on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So if that's your thing, then please check it out. On to today's guests. We're firmly back in the Legends Lounge again. A gentleman with a CV of just such high quality. He's a guy who plays with great feel, and he hits hard too. He's a real hard hitter. He's played with such legends as the B-52s, Bruce Springsteen, David Bowie. Don't get much bigger, really, do they? It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Mr. Zachary Alford.
My pleasure, Maddie.
Good to see you. And yeah, as I say, really appreciate it. Now, we're in a little bit of a strange time at the moment. I think I say this most interviews because it's a good place to start. You know, we're hopefully towards the end of a pandemic, and it's not been the greatest time for people in music and the arts. Have you managed to keep busy?
I have managed to keep busy, but not in the way that I normally would. I think a lot of artists and musicians have used this time to delve deeper into their craft. And so that's what I've been doing. You know, strangely enough, I could never have practiced the way I've been practicing had life just continued as normal. So this has given us this unique opportunity to just basically be 16 years old again, go to the drum shed or guitar shed or keyboard shed or computer shed every single day and spend, you know, as long as you want, basically addressing the things that you've always wanted to work on and always thought, man, I need to practice that. Yeah. And so it's been really good for that. Some studio stuff has been cropping up more and more lately. So over the past year, I've done some sessions both in New York City and up here in upstate New York. And yeah, things have been moving along, but I've really been busy, since that's the word you used.
Yeah, sure.
Just playing and learning new stuff. Like basically I've been immersing myself in Ableton. Okay. Because that's something I've always wanted to do. And no situation ever really called for it. You know, someone else always knew how to use it, so they handled it. And, you know, there's a time window there you need to really just sit there and be able to kind of, you know, suck at it for a while before you needed to actually know it. And so that's what I've been doing for these months, just really getting to know it and getting ready for a situation where I'll be running all the loops and backing tracks.
Because Ableton is a really powerful tool, but it's not the easiest to kind of get your head around, is it? It's tricky.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I haven't tried a whole bunch of them. From what I understand, it's on the easier side. In fact, especially now, you know, compared to 5-10 years ago, it's much easier to learn. And it's getting better all the time. The new version, a guy who helps me out, Sterling Campbell, he said that The Weeknd did their whole album on Ableton. Wow. So the quality is now comparable to pretty much Logic and Pro Tools.
Yeah, oh, that's good. That's good. So you're in I guess that's your rehearsal room. Are you able to record in there as well, Zach?
Yeah, that's the next move is getting some mics and stands and getting recording ready in this very space.
Sure. That's where the expense comes in then.
Yeah, but again, people are saying, you know, and there's other guys I'm talking to, Victor Andrizio's one, you can really throw together a workable recording system for not an arm and a leg anymore.
Yeah. That's the one thing. I think there's no excuse having poor equipment anymore, because everything's so available, as you say, and it's cost effective. You can still buy Neumann and Neve and whatever, but you don't have to. That's the key now, isn't it?
Right.
But no, well, it's good that you've been keeping busy, and I've heard a lot of the same from guys, that they've just been practicing, and just it's time. Everyone's had time, haven't they? So there's kind of been no excuse to get into doing the things that you've wanted to do.
Yeah, I got no sympathy for the people who were like, saying, "Oh, all you guys learning 5 languages and this, F you." It's like, dude, sorry, but if you've just been sitting on your ass this whole time, I got no sympathy for you.
Exactly. It's far too easy to sit watching Netflix, isn't it? And just doing nothing. It's too easy.
That to me would just make me even more depressed, because to think that you had over a year of total free time to work on all that stuff you always wanted to and you didn't, to me, that's depressing.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Life is short.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big chunk of it as well, isn't it? A whole year, more than a year, really, isn't it? Because we're still not out of it, and we're still
not. And you said it looks like we're coming out of it, and I really am hoping we are, because I plan on being back in the spotlight in September. So,
that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Well, let's hope so. Well, look, if you don't mind, can we jump back a few years to kind of where drums took hold of you, if you like, or your first memories of music, whichever was first?
Yeah, music was first. I had older siblings, so they were always playing records in the house and stuff, and I just remember listening to a lot of Beatles and Stones and God, I mean, so many albums. Well, not so many, but for the 1970s, it was kind of a lot.
Yeah.
10 years after, Janis Joplin, and then the collection grew, and as it grew, I began to get into drums. So they kind of happened simultaneously. So from very early on, the way I listened to music was not just as an outsider. It was much more as someone who wanted to participate and someone who wanted to know how it was being put together, and someone who was kind of, I guess, a little more judgmental, for lack of a better word, about what I was listening to. I was listening to it for the craft.
Yeah. I totally understand what you mean by that. Yeah.
Because, I often think, I hear musicians who maybe just recently got into playing an instrument, or if not recently, at least at a slightly later age, like, maybe late teen years, or maybe they're in their 20s and they're just picking up, their axe for the first time. And it's like, I often think, wow, I definitely wouldn't have gone that route you went, because I was far more judgmental at a very young age. Having said that, there's the people who are way snobbier than I am. So, and I've been around them.
Yeah. So did you, I mean, what made you pick up drumsticks? I mean, was it just something that drew you to the drummers?
I think all the instruments were interesting to me. I played piano before I played drums.
Okay.
Not to any great level of proficiency. I was 9 years old.
Sure.
But because my older brother's best friend was a drummer, I got to see a drum set close up at an early age, 9-10 years old.
Yeah.
And something about being that close to the drums was really fascinating. But I also just felt like I could relate to it rhythmically. I just, as much as I loved the magic of guitar and the coolness of bass, something about the way the drums were this multi-limbed beat machine just really, I don't know, I just gravitated toward it.
Sure.
And once I started on the drums, that was it. I was like, okay, this is my instrument.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. When you actually see a drum kit up close, and there's some kind of mystery about it. And it was much the same for me. My cousin was a drummer, and I saw him, and I thought, this is it. I've got to do this, you know. And I think it's probably the same for everybody who plays drums. It's a life. It becomes an obsession, doesn't it? It's not a normal instrument. It is an obsession, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that it has the oldest primal roots. And it also has, you know, some pretty good staying power because, like I say, from way before there was even electricity up until now, when we have every means of sampling and, you know, computer music available, people still love drums, and and the beat is still so essential to music, you know, and beats are still quite complex. You know, guys are programming really. It's not just boom, 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 boom all the time. It's, you know, we've got like all these forms of music where rhythmic complexity is a part of it.
Absolutely. So where did your drum education start then? Obviously, I'm sure you've been playing along with records and stuff. Did you have formal lessons at any point?
Eventually, yes. The teaching really started from the first guy I saw play. Like I said, my brother's friend. Yeah. His name was Chandra Sharma. And I just loved watching him play and could glean so much by the way he played. He was really a groove player. He wasn't into chops. He was just into groove and tasty fills. And this is like the beginning of the disco era. So he was getting a lot of disco gigs. Yeah. And he would tell me, yeah, don't do all that fancy stuff. You just need to be able to go, you know, and he did it in such a way that the feel was integral. And so that was something that I always kept in mind. And then there were a fair amount of drummers in my neighborhood, you know, musicians in general. I mean, growing up in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, you've got a lot of artists, high concentration, and a lot of successful artists are settling there as well. Yeah. So there's a whole music kind of scene there. And another drummer, Pooji Bell, who was already professional and very highly trained, by the way. I mean, he took drum corps and everything as a kid. Right. Okay. He became one of my teachers, but I didn't really take formal lessons until I got to college. I went to Berklee College of Music for a year and a half and studied under Tommy Campbell there, and another guy named Ian Froman. And through the two of them, I was able to really say, okay, I'm actually taking drum lessons now. I mean, I still wasn't a great student, but that was the first formal education. I mean, I had actually had some lessons with Kenwood Denard before that. Okay. But again, I just didn't have the stick-to-itiveness to be a good student. So while I'd pay attention to what they said and practice it a little bit, I was never able to take that practice and internalize it and make it into something that would become like something in my arsenal that I could then use to learn more. Yeah. And that's the thing about learning. When you know, when people give you stuff to learn, you have to really, really just chew on it and, you know, go over it for a long time until it transforms inside you. And that's how you get to the next level. That's how you actually get those skills that seem impossible. It's just by constantly reworking everything you've been shown. And that's what I didn't really learn until later. Right. Okay. So I'm guessing it would have been some pretty heavy reading involved, you know, in that college as well. Chart reading. Yeah. I wasn't so keen on the sight reading, but my chart reading scores got pretty high. Yeah. I got up to 6s and 7s, which is almost the top. So that's, you know, but then I never used it after I left. So don't put a chart in front of me now. I'll sweat bullets. I'm sure you have your own way of doing it anyway. I think most people do, don't they? You know? Yeah.
Yeah, some cheat sheets and what have you. So, once you left college, you're out as a drummer. What happens first for you?
Well, because I grew up in New York City, and I was really hitting the scene primarily in the 80s, there was a pretty vibrant music scene happening there and a club culture happening. And, and it was all totally affordable. You could go out and go to clubs all night almost for free back in those days. And if you had even a few connections, you could do it literally for free.
Yeah.
So even before I got to Berkeley, I was already getting totally entrenched in the club scene and in the music scene that was happening in the city. So when I came out of Berkeley, guys were like, okay, you're back. Great. Listen, I got a gig in Germany for a month. You want to do it? So I kind of jumped right back in. And that was one of the reasons I left Berkeley, actually, was that I didn't feel I wanted to continue on academically because that's not where my interests lie. And I knew I had connections and I already had experience playing in clubs and on the scene. And so for me, the next move was just going back home.
Yeah. And
the first guy who actually kind of asked me to do something was Melvin Gibbs, a bass player who was in a band called Defunct. He also had his own band, which I contributed to I&I, and he's also played with Henry Rollins for years. But he had stuff happening in Europe through his Defunct connections. And so almost as soon as I got back, we jumped into rehearsals and we went straight to Europe.
Wow. So it's kind of dream scenario, really. You come back, you've had your education and straight out doing it.
It's not lost on me how lucky I was that infrastructure existed for me and I was able to take advantage of it.
Wow. That's, and I guess, growing up in New York, I guess you're in the thick of everything as well. But on the downside, I guess there's a lot of drummers there. You've got a lot of competition. I'm guessing that's the way it was or is.
Yeah, there was healthy competition, and I felt like I was an up and comer and, I also was pretty confident in my skills, even though I was still totally green.
Yeah.
But, enough people wanted to give me a chance. And yeah, the road was not too tough. I can't lie. It was like, as soon as I got back, I got busy and I was playing, before I knew it, in 5 different bands. And I was getting opportunities to go to Europe, and opportunities just kept leading to other opportunities. And so kind of like I never looked back, and the grass never had a chance to grow under my feet. I just kept moving. So it was a great environment. And I saw a lot of other people who didn't quite fare as well. And I just felt really lucky that I was able to make the connections I made and be able to follow the path that presented itself.
Sure. And has it kind of been like that ever since, one job to another, just pretty much seamless? Or have you ever had a time when things were a little bit lean?
Oh, I've definitely had some lean times. After the 90s, things really changed up. The early 2000s, I was working primarily in Japan, and I spent basically 5 years touring there.
Yeah.
And so connections kind of dried up a bit. I did, however, get the opportunity in 2005 to work with Gwen Stefani, and that was great. That kind of put me back on the scene on this side of the pond. But from then on, it really was, the latter half of the 2000s was very, very sparse for me.
Yeah.
And since then, it's kind of just been, feast and famine.
Yeah.
I'll get work, then I'll have to kind of go on a diet for a bit, and then something else to jump through. But I've never had a manager or an agent.
Yeah.
So I've always been able to work simply from word of mouth. The phone just kind of rings magically somehow.
That's the best way, I think, isn't it? Surely.
Well, you get to keep that extra 10-15%.
Exactly. That's a bonus, isn't it? You know, you mentioned about touring Japan for 5 years. On a gig like that, I guess it's a double-edged sword, really. You're getting the regular money, but your name's kind of a little bit out of the loop, I guess, over in, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of guys go there and never come back.
Really?
I was still interested in, you know, interacting with the rest of the world. So as much as I love Japan and I adore Japan, it's definitely one of my favorite countries on the planet and my favorite cultures. But you know, my career was really made in the West.
Yeah.
And so I feel an attachment to that. And I feel like that's my first home. And I kind of do get homesick from time to time.
Well,
if that's allowed.
Well, I think it is, yeah. And then obviously you did a fair while with the B-52s as well. That must have been a nice gig to do.
Oh, that was talk about, you know, the dream. That was fantastic, because even for them, first of all, you're getting to play with a band you love.
Yeah.
You know, since you're a kid. So it was a dream come true in that sense. But also, even though they'd been around for a decade, by the time I hooked up with them, they hadn't yet had the megastar status that Cosmic Thing gave to them.
Sure.
And so we rode that wave together.
Yeah.
And so it was amazing for me, being my first international world tour, and their first world tour with, you know, like #1 hit status.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of firsts for both of us. And yeah, we just had such a blast, and it lasted a long time. We went everywhere. I mean, Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe, States, Canada.
So literally everywhere.
Well, we didn't go to Africa. We didn't go to Asia.
Okay.
We had the chance to, but I think we just got too burnt out by the end of it and just said enough's enough. We need a break. I still haven't been to India. You know, there's a bunch of places that I haven't been to that I'd like to see.
Sure. Well, look, there's an album or two I'd like to talk about that you've played on. And one of my favorite albums is Manic Street Preachers, Generation Terrorists. Now, I didn't realize that was you on drums. Did you play on all the tracks on that?
No, I didn't. The story behind that is interesting. They had a big buzz around them. And they had, you know, a deal in England and they had a deal in the States.
Yeah.
Now they wanted to release the album in the States, and their producer said, we can't release it like this because it was all programmed drums.
Yeah.
And the feeling in the States, I guess at the time, this is 1990.
1992, maybe. Yeah, might be. I can't remember exactly, but very early.
Yeah, it could have been 92. You could be right. Actually, I think you're right. The feeling was, you know, rock and roll has to have, and especially punk rock and punk inspired rock and roll. It's got to have a real drummer on it. And so they called me in. David Bowie was the producer, and I went and I played on, I think it was 3 or 4 tracks. I played on Nat West, I played on You Love Us, and I played on oh God, I'm going to totally blank on the names.
It wasn't Motorcycle Emptiness. You did play on that one?
No.
Can
you name a couple more from that album?
Oh, dear me. Hang on. Now we're going back. I shall find it. On the magic of telephones and Google. Wait a second. Here we go. It's been a long time since I've heard it, actually. Let's have a little look here. Slash and Burn, Nat West.
Slash and Burn.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the song NatWest
So
is a great song, by the way, and it probably doesn't
yeah,
mean anything to you. Those lyrics, all British banks. I don't know if you knew that or not.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Barclays, Midlands, Lloyd's. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I didn't at the time, but I said, "So what's the song about?" And they told me, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, "Okay." And then touring in Europe, I would see the banks all the time, and be like, "Okay, that's what they're singing about."
But it was a huge album, wasn't it? It was a massive album, huge smash.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. So, did you record that over in the UK, or was that in the States?
No, no, did that in the States.
Did you? Right. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember the studio we used.
Mm. Amazing. Well, great. And it's just strange the things you find out, and it's like, oh, right, okay, I didn't realize that. The amount of times I've listened to that album and not realized, you just think,
Well, if you listen to the UK version, you were listening to a drum machine.
right, okay. Well, I don't know which version I've heard then.
Yeah,
So it's only on the American version.
that's my understanding. Yeah, it was the
Right.
American release. So if you YouTube it, you can definitely hear a difference if it's a video that has live drumming on it, as opposed to what's on your CD.
Right. Okay. Well, that's interesting. There you go. So you don't know these things until you talk to the right people, do you? Amazing. And then another album, a huge album, is River of Dreams. How did that come about? I'm fascinated to know. Obviously, Billy Joel has a great drummer from a long time back. How did that one come about? Because I know Steve Jordan played on that album as well on a couple of tracks, didn't he?
Yes. Well, from my understanding, because again, you asked me how it came about. When you get a call for something, you don't always say, "So who told you to
Yeah.
call?" But I did hear, I think that it was Steve Jordan who recommended me for it.
Wow.
He was very close with the producer Danny Korchmar, and I think Danny wanted Steve to do it, and for whatever reason, Steve maybe had a conflict, and so Steve threw my name out there, and so I got a call. I think it was from Danny. I can't remember actually who called me for that. But I got a call to show up at the Hit Factory. And it was me and this fantastic bass player, T.M. Stevens.
Oh, yeah.
And Billy and Danny Korchmar, who was producing it, but also playing with him guitar. And so we show up at Hit Factory, and Artie Smith is doing the gear rentals. I don't know if you know Artie, but he's a character.
I know the
fantastic name. Yeah, and he's just got the best gear. And but I brought a bunch of my own stuff. Not a bunch, but I brought I brought a Yamaha snare and I think a Furchi snare. And we just set about to trying it out, because basically he had already recorded the album with his band.
Okay.
And again, for whatever reason, there was some dissatisfaction on I don't know if it was Billy's part or Danny's, but they wanted to try something else. And we were the new rhythm section, and we just every day cut a tune. It was like a tune a day kind of thing. So I think I was there for like 2 weeks.
Some great songs on. Obviously, you did River of Dreams, which was just an enormous song, and I really love this album, and I listened to it a lot when it came out. But there's one thing in it, it always grabbed me, and it was the snare sound on a minor variation. Beautiful. Which drum was that? Can you remember?
Yeah, that was probably one of Artie's. So I could only guess. I really can't say it. I don't want to throw something out there that's not true, because then it'll be set in stone. So
do you remember the track though? Do you know the track I'm talking about?
Sure. Yeah.
Beautiful. And you playing on that reminded me of the sadly late Roger Hawkins. Just totally simple, just beautiful playing. And so that every time I heard it, and I thought, yeah, I hear Roger Hawkins there. And
well, you definitely, the song has that vibe to it. It's really got a kind of old soul vibe. And so I was probably, doing my best to channel that without even thinking about it. Because, that was still kind of early in that was 93, I guess. Yeah. Still the early part of the 90s. I'd only really started touring on that level in 89. So it was still kind of, part of the whole beginning of the whirlwind of my career. And I still feel like compared to now, I was so green back then, and I wasn't really thinking, I don't know. I just learned a lot since then. Let's put it that way. But yeah, thanks. That's really nice of you to say that.
But it's I mean, it makes you wonder. You say these things, but it's beautiful, cultured playing all the same. And do you think if it had been now, you'd have done it differently? Would you have played something differently on that, or if you understand what I mean?
Differently, just better.
Okay, right, okay. Because I every time I hear that, I think, yeah, beautiful, great sounds, just great technique from Steve as well on the tracks that he plays. Obviously, it's just a brilliant album, and I think it's one I'll always listen to. That one, so amazing stuff.
Wow, well, thanks. That's so nice of you to say.
Oh,
what an honor to be compared to Roger Hawkins.
Yeah, it's but you get where I'm going with that. It's just simple, and it's it's got that classic kind of that snare, that ping on that snare, which I love.
Yeah, basically what I guess I was trying to say is I wasn't thinking directly of Roger. I was maybe thinking of guys like Steve Jordan and Charlie Drayton, who were inspired by guys like Roger Hawkins.
Yeah.
And so inadvertently I was channeling him, but maybe in my awareness of the time, I was thinking of more contemporary influences.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. That makes sense, doesn't it? That makes perfect sense. And then Bruce Springsteen, you did a massive spell with Bruce. That now the gigs alone must be hard work, because he's not known for doing short. It's not an hour and a half on stage with Bruce Springsteen, is it? Let's be honest.
No, but that was exactly my wheelhouse. I wanted to just play as powerfully as I could for, and, the more the better. So 4-hour show, bring it on.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you don't shy away. You hit as well, don't you? You're not a lightweight player.
I definitely come from that school of hitting hard, and that's from watching guys like Charlie Drayton and Steve Jordan.
Yeah.
And, John Bonham, one of my favorites. Stuart Copeland from the Police, and Omar Hakim.
Right.
Those drummers were real big influences on me, and Stuart especially. I can remember this vision of him taping up his fingers from some documentary I saw back in the day, and lo and behold, I ended up taping up my fingers, and I was proud to do it because Stuart did it, and he just had such an energy on the drums live, and he was also such an innovator. He was the guy who came along in the end of the 70s and was like playing drums completely like no one else. I mean, it was just like, whoa, and such power, such passion. Almost another guy who's a really powerful, passionate player. And I'm sorry, but you just could not look at, a section of a record store in the 80s and not see something on that play them. I mean, he was with everybody. If it wasn't, Weather Report, it was Dire Straits, Bowie. He's got 2 Bowie albums under his belt. He was just playing with everybody. So those 2 guys were huge influences on me.
Yeah, I had no idea that Omar Hakim was such a hard hitter. I didn't know. Stuart Copeland, an obvious one.
Well, he's not as hard as Stuart saying, but he gets very passionate when he plays and definitely puts his body into it.
Oh, there we go. That's fascinating. I didn't know. Well, there you go. So you learn something every day, don't you?
Yeah, Google him at Zildjian Day or the Buddy Rich tribute or something. You'll see he's attacking the drums.
Fantastic.
Favorites. That was the prerequisite for me. I couldn't understand seeing drummers who just sat back and played relaxed, especially when it was in the kind of room where it just was not translated. If it's a small club, that's going to be totally appropriate. But when I would see these guys playing in the Ritz or, at the Beacon or a bigger place, and I'd be like, he just did a fill around the kit and I couldn't even hear it. I'd be like, he's depending way too much on the sound man. I don't depend on the sound man. I'm filling the room. And that was my you know, my MO. That was my credo for the first half of my career. I don't play that hard anymore. And it's because I know that there's a symbiotic relationship between the sound engineer and the drummer. But and also I've done more recording, and I know that when you just attack the drums like that, it doesn't always work in the studio. You know, microphones, for whatever reason, can work a lot better if you actually back off a little.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've learned to control myself more, but it used to all be about the physical sensation of hitting the drum with a lot of power and hearing the tone that power makes it, you know, deliver.
Sure.
And also when you hear a sound that's really big, you want the drummer to look like he's making that sound. And so again, I couldn't understand when a guy would just be tapping the drums and, you know, it's just like, come on, man, I want it to go boom, bah, boom, bah, you know, that's what I want to see.
And you can't fail to be motivated to do that when you see someone like Bruce Springsteen fronting it up, who's just energy personified, isn't he? Let's be honest.
I think you've seen him.
Oh yeah, the whole band. I mean, I'm sure Clarence would have been with the band at that point, and it's just the whole just energy, isn't it? It's just total energy all the time.
Clarence was not with the band.
Oh, was he not? Okay.
No, the only Roy Bitson was in the band.
Right. Okay. I see.
Everyone else was a new hire. Bruce basically wanted to break away, and try something. He basically was going in a new direction. He let go of his whole band except for Roy, because, you know, the piano that Roy played, I guess he felt was the one element he wanted to really keep. And otherwise, he wanted to try some different flavors. Clarence did come and guest on one show once, but otherwise, excuse me, Crystal Taliaferro was taking over the saxophone duties.
Okay, right, okay.
Who's from Billy Joel's band.
Yeah, that's the way it is, isn't it? Yeah, but you know, but you must have known at the end of a gig, you've worked, you've put a shift in. You must have been half dead at the end of a gig.
Yeah. I think it made me stronger.
Yeah.
And but the good thing is Bruce knows how to pace a show. He knows how to do, you know, some hard hitters and then to slow it down, and then, you know, you get to leave actually when he just does a solo acoustic bit and then another solo acoustic bit, and then he'll call the band back in, and then he'll ramp it up again. So you can make it through. You know, he doesn't. Sure. You're not dead.
Not quite. You know, your career has been. I always don't like saying this because it sounds like it's over, and it's not. But I say your career has so far has been just incredible, hasn't it? The names that you've played for, it's gone from one to the other. Obviously, you can't ignore David Bowie. I mean, as names go, they don't really get much bigger than David Bowie when we're talking legendary status, do they? You know, how did that feel when the gig came around? Were you a fan anyway?
I was a fan. I wasn't a super fan. It's the same with out of the bands, the Bees, Springsteen, and Bowie. If you would have said who are you probably the most, you know, who'd you listen to the most, was probably the B-52s.
Yeah, sure.
But of course, I knew David's music because you just can't not know his music. And I remember vividly when Fame was a #1 hit on the radio, and, you know, everybody loved that song. And then, of course, when Let's Dance came out, you could not get away from that either. No. And it was just amazing to see how he transformed himself yet again and completely proved that he was like the king of the new wave era. But when I worked with him, there was a lot of his catalog I hadn't actually been that familiar with. I didn't really know all the hunky dory stuff. I didn't really know all the Man Who Fell to Earth, Man Who Sold the World, stuff. I didn't know Buddha of Suburbia. I didn't know, a fair amount of stuff. But I knew Station. That was my favorite of his albums. I knew Scary Monsters. I knew Ziggy, of course.
Yeah, of course.
I remember, it's funny because I cannot remember when I first heard Ziggy, but I remember seeing Rocky Horror Picture Show in like 1978 and thinking, oh, this is so Ziggy. Like these are the children of Ziggy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, that you asked me how it was. It was like, okay, if I hadn't arrived yet, I've arrived. Because like you say, there's just very few artists in existence on that level. And whether you like him or not, it's just undeniable that his influence is not only beyond vast in music, but fashion, cinema, so many different art forms. Sure. I mean, I think even you can find his influence in anime. It's like he's such an icon of the culture, which is why I was so starstruck when I met him. Starstruck.
was that kind of the first time that had happened?
Yeah, it was the first time that like the image of the person was so not only big but so kind of mysterious and intimidating that I couldn't keep eye contact with him. It was so like, he was still this David that hadn't really revealed himself yet, like he would in his later years, and especially like in the reality tour days when he really opens up and lets you see who he is. He was still this enigma, and it was like, whoa, that's the alien.
He
that's
didn't
the
put
vampire from The Hunger.
He didn't put you off though, obviously.
No, he was as warm as could be, and just convivial and always joking around, and not a perfectionist, not a micromanager. He is a perfectionist, but he's not a micromanager.
Right.
And but his view of perfection is not what everyone else's is. His is like, sometimes when you just throw something out there, it's perfect. He doesn't necessarily have a preconceived notion of what it should be. He puts everything in place and positions it so that what results will be the perfection he's looking for.
Okay, that's interesting. So is that how the recording process is with him? It's just kind of, he's open to ideas as well from everybody else. He's not
absolutely. Yeah, always. He's always open to ideas in every every genre, every sense, every medium, no matter what. Like I was reading a book on Roman life in the days of Cicero on the bus one day, and he was like, oh, tell me about it. Like he just always wanted to know more about anything and everything. And in the studio, if you had an idea for something, he would say, go for it. If he felt it wasn't working out, he'd say, okay, that's not working, let's move on. But he was open to it.
Oh, that's interesting. That's good. That's nice to know. As I mean, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say a bad word about him, personality-wise, and so that's good to hear.
Yeah, a good bloke, as you would say.
A good bloke, indeed. Absolutely. So, have you any ideas when you might get out and about? I think, did you say September time you were hoping to be back out doing some things?
Yes, I am.
So what live stuff have you got in the pipeline, if you can say at the moment? Anything exciting?
I can say it, and I normally don't, and I haven't been in interviews because although I'm not superstitious, I just don't believe that it's prudent to say something until you're actually setting a foot on stage.
Sure.
But I feel pretty reasonably sure that everything's lined up. So if it doesn't happen, I'm sorry it fell apart.
My fault.
But otherwise, but you can look forward to seeing me with the psychedelic first.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I wasn't expecting that. Excellent stuff. Brilliant. So
Yeah.
is that a worldwide tour or?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, there you go. Hot off the press.
Off the press. You heard it first, Maddie.
Hey, look, Zach, it has been a total pleasure. Thank you so much for giving up your time. I really, really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you in September, because no doubt it will happen. Yeah, you're going to come for me if it doesn't, aren't you? So look, really appreciate your time. It's been very kind of you.
Yeah, well, thanks for seeking me out, and anytime, Maddie.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Have a great day. See you soon. Thank you, Zach.
You too.